All right, here we go. Um, Welcome PTFC players and families for today's soccer discussion with Eddie Pope. Joining us today, we have Josh Winley, our PTFC operations manager, Chris Day, our boys coordinator, Marshall Hodge, our girls coordinator, and last but not least, Eddie Pope, our featured guest. Eddie began his soccer journey with the High Point Stars Youth Soccer Club, which is now known as the Piedmont Soccer Alliance, which is a branch of PTFC. He played high school soccer at Southwest Guilford. He attended the University of North Carolina, where he went and not only played for the Tar Heel soccer team under Elmar Bolovich, but also kicked football with the legendary Mac Brown. Eddie had a stellar college career, and in 1996, he was selected in the MLS draft as the second overall pick to DC United. That same year, Eddie participated in the 1996 Summer Olympics held in Atlanta, representing our U.S. under-23 national team. After returning from the Olympics, Eddie went on and helped DC United win the league title by scoring a golden goal in the first ever MLS Cup against the Los Angeles Galaxy. Later that fall, Eddie played with the senior national team for the first time and helped the team beat Trinidad and Tobago 2-0. This was a springboard for an incredible domestic career where he was named the MLS Defender of the Year in 1997. He helped DC United win their second MLS title, followed by the CONCACAF Champions League and Inter-American Cup title, again scoring the match-winning goal in that competition. He earned placement on the MLS Best 11 4 times and played in the MLS All-Star Game 4 times. And in 2005, Eddie was named to the MLS All-Time Best Team. Eddie also had an amazing international career playing for the U.S. national team, earning 82 caps and represented our country in 3 FIFA World Cups. In 1998 in France, 2002 in Korea, Japan, and in 2006 in Germany. Eddie was a stalwart for our national side from 1996 to 2006, and in every game Eddie was selected, he started. And his career concluded with the induction into the National Soccer Hall of Fame. It's an honor and privilege to have you, Eddie. What's super cool is going through your accomplishments and that you started your soccer career here in the Triad. And I just wanted to see, with the kind of kicking off questions, can you expand on your experience playing locally with the High Point Stars and what the club scene looked like at that time?
Yeah, I don't know how much your club knows about you, but I'm assuming they understand that you were around at that time, a year above me, you're older, and then I obviously played with your younger brother. And I mean, at the time, there weren't a lot of, so I'm in 73, born in 1973, there just weren't a lot of clubs around that had that age group for us. So we typically played in the 72 age group, 71 age group at times, as I'm sure you did as a 72. And the parents were the coaches, the dads were the coaches. That's all we had back then. And then if you could get a little bit of access to a college coach or even a college player to help with practices and things like that, that was a huge deal at the time. We did a lot of running around at High Point College, which was tiny and now is massive in the High Point University. So we tried to tap into all of the resources that we had at the time, but really it was a lot of, parents coaching, all of us learning on the fly a little bit, playing whoever we could find to play in our age group, which was a plus at times. And then outside of that, trying to find some tournaments outside of the state or somewhere or some other part of the state to be able to participate in. So it was all pieced together, a little bit here, a little bit there, and that was really the development of the quote unquote American player at that time.
Yeah, so Eddie, we're going through your list of accomplishments, and it seemed almost never ending. And it's really awesome, as a couple of us have been in the High Point area for such a long time, to see it. But we all, as players and coaches, have like those special things that we're proud of throughout our respective careers. So we were wondering if anything that maybe David said, or maybe another note from your career that sort of sticks out in your mind as something special that you can reflect on and really be proud of.
Yeah, I think, representing your country on any level is the cream of the crop. And you know, you work so hard, as I know a lot of younger players do. You try to train on your own a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of getting cut, not making this team or that team. And so I think at some point to be able to have it all culminate in you representing your country is to me was amazing. Being able to do it on the Olympic level, but then of course in a World Cup. For me, the first time in France, first game, hearing your national anthem, it was a moment for me that I'll never forget. And that's when you're kind of standing there and it's surreal. It's just a surreal moment. For a moment there, you're not even thinking about who you're playing against. You just, all those training sessions and all those tough moments kind of flash through your mind, and you kind of feel like, wow, I've finally gotten to, quote unquote, the tip of the iceberg here. So for me, I mean, that really, anytime I was able to represent my country was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, so Eddie, over the course of your career, you've played against world-class talent, obviously, specifically world-class attackers and forwards. Who was the hardest player that you had to defend, and what defensive tactics or techniques did you apply to try to deal with that player?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I'd say I'll probably give you more than one, but I think there's one point we played against Brazil, and Romario was who I had to mark at the time, and I think he was on Barcelona at that time, and just the soccer IQ that they have is super high. And then the nervousness that you have because you know who it is, and then you have to do with your own confidence level. They're Brazil, of course, and he plays for Barcelona, and I'm an American player, and I play for DC United or what have you. Even getting over that and being, having the necessity of focusing on your job and knowing that, well, you still have to stop him no matter what. I'd say Romario for sure. I'd say Klose from Germany. Again, another fantastic player. Jurgen Klinsmann, all great players, all great strikers. And for me, the difficult thing in marking them was the game for them was cerebral. I mean, they were constantly thinking, they would look at me and look me up and down, and they would look at the spaces to the left and right. I was watching them constantly. They were just looking around the field while they're watching the ball, from time to time. And you can just see them almost evolving as the game goes on and trying to figure me out and figure out, the people around me. And so you have to try to match that as well as you can see them, now they're not standing in this space. They spent 10 minutes over just 10 yards to the right of you, and now they're in another spot. So, I mean, it's just really trying to be able to adapt along with them during the game, evolve with them during the game, trying to keep an eye on them, and really trying to guess what they're thinking, and trying to figure them out as they're trying to figure you out. And then the last thing is just holding on for dear life and just trying to think of all the things all the coaches have said to you over the years from day one, all the way up until that game, the voices that you have in your head from your former coaches, and tapping into all of it, and trying to use every bit that you have to be able to stop that particular player.
That's a lot of great comments there, Eddie. We really appreciate that. But we all want to know also, who's the best player that you've ever played with?
Yeah, I'd say maybe played with probably Marco Echeverri of Bolivia. He was just again another cerebral guy. He used to always talk about how he doesn't see the field maybe the way that we see it, and everybody has their little ways that they see the field. I think as you start to get to higher levels, not everybody sees things the way that that you would think they do. He used to always talk about how he looks at, when he's watching the game, it's almost like he's above everyone and he's looking down so he can see everybody at once. And that, once he explained that to me, that made sense to me. I said, that's kind of how he plays. He can see things, or he hits a ball and you're thinking, why did he hit it there? And then you see, oh, well, he saw that way before I did. But again, another guy who could do everything. He could pass, he could shoot, he could dribble, he could hit free kicks, he could put corner kicks wherever you wanted to put them. Just an absolutely amazing player.
So over the course of your career, who had the most enjoyable personality to play with as a teammate?
Oh man, a lot of personalities. That's for sure. That's a great question. Probably a couple of guys who had interesting personalities that I would say that I played with. For me, I always had sort of this attraction to my goalkeepers, So, like from Casey Keller to Brad Friedel to Tim Howard, they all had really very calming sort of personalities on the field. So as things are chaotic, things are going on, they were almost, like a full level below everyone on the calmness sort of spectrum. And they're not really screaming and yelling. Maybe they're setting up a wall, something like that. But throughout the course of the game, they are literally just talking in very calm tones, very calm voices, and it just relaxes the whole back line. And that it's a talent. It's being able to operate under fire. So that's sort of on the field. Those guys were amazing at that. And when you're tough game, World Cup match, what have you, lots of people, super loud, to have those really calming voices behind you, organizing, giving detailed information, getting you in the right places, warning you of this player or that player. Those guys were amazing at that. And then maybe, off the field, there are a lot of personalities. I think we all see Taylor Twellman on TV. Fun individual. As fun as you could probably imagine he's on TV. He's like that off air as well. Super great individual, fun to be around. Another local, Roy Lassiter, funny guy, super great personality, smart guy. Enjoyed being around him. I was pretty fortunate in saying that the vast majority of players that I played with were great people, were wonderful people. Obviously, they're now in big positions for U.S. soccer, for MLS, and things like that. And to me, that is a reflection of them and the way that they carried themselves as players throughout their careers, and then obviously after their careers. So I really don't have anyone I can complain about. Everybody was really good.
Carried on with these people that you surrounded yourself with during those moments. Are there coaches like at the youth, college, or professional level that made like a really strong impact on you and like help maximize your abilities?
Absolutely. I'd say at, especially the younger level, younger ages, for me, maybe it was Woody, right? The local guy. I think it was just sort of that first organized structure that you had, and was able to talk the game and say things that you hadn't heard before and make you think about the game in ways you hadn't thought about it before. My high school coach, Carl Fleming, Frank Washburn, those were great minds, younger guys that I could really identify with, as opposed to maybe someone who was an older coach. I think they were fantastic in helping me understand the game in their own way also. Gerald York at Winston-Salem, another guy who really understood the game and was able to help us with that. I think it was important. And then I move on, I started getting a little bit older and doing some of the ODP stuff with Alan Dawson, with that accent and him really taking a few minutes to pull you to the side and give you a word or two. And super, super big for me, Jay Vidovich. Again, another coach who really took the time, would train me on my own sometimes. I'd roll over to Wake Forest and beg him to train me, and he'd take me out on the field and really work with me. And he was someone who, again, it's like every little step you take, you start to surround yourself with individuals who know a little bit more about the game. As you start to learn more about the game, they can give you a nugget here or a nugget there. And then, of course, Elmar Bolovich at UNC in Chapel Hill was another one who really helped me get myself on the right path in regards to playing, but also in regards to my work rate off the field. And, for most of us, and luckily that's changed a lot now because like you individuals now, you've played the game as for a long time, and you now have the ability to coach kids, where before it was, like I said, it was our parents. So, right. They have an influence on me as well. So all those voices, you'd be surprised, but, something that somebody said to you ages ago may pop up while you're in a training session somewhere in California trying to make, some team somewhere, some national team camp. All of a sudden something, boom, pops into your head as you're really just trying to compete at the highest level.
Yeah, and we really were in awe of everything that you had achieved in your career, Eddie. And a huge thing that our club is about is whatever your personal development is, we want to try and take that as far as we can. And so we wanted to ask you a couple of things about your own development, because you weren't born already on the national team. You had to climb a lot of steps in a ladder to get there. And we were wondering, there's a lot of steps that you took from whether it's regular club in high school just to ODP, to college, to the professional or even national team games. How did that environment seem to change with each step up? And did you as an individual have to change as well to meet different needs?
Yeah, it's for me, it started off, again, with not having a ton of information about the game, right? There just wasn't that much available. It wasn't on television, unless you had one of those huge satellites that you could see from the moon in your yard, which, I didn't have that. So maybe you found a VHS tape with something on it somewhere. There just wasn't a lot of info out there. And in regards to personal training, forget it, right? There was nothing really. And so a lot for me was just doing stuff on my own. I would say that, if looking back on it now, if I were doing those things now, people would probably think, I was crazy, because it was, obviously, you can work hard, you can work smart. It was just a lot of working hard. It wasn't necessarily the smartest stuff, but I loved doing it. So, I first started off kicking against my house and breaking windows, and then my dad built a wall in the back, my backyard. So then I would go out and kick off that thing for hours. But again, it was probably mind-numbing work, right? I wasn't doing the things that I could have been doing. But again, I definitely loved what I was doing and really enjoyed the game. And so as I was doing those things, right, whether it's, 1,000 touches, 2,000 touches, but, thinking about that, I was using a baseball rebounder to throw the ball off and pretend to trap it. I used to have my buddies from my neighborhood, when they would want to go to the park and play basketball, I'd make them, throw me balls so I could hit them back to the inside of the foot, instep, outside of the foot, head it back to me. And then we go play basketball. And so I think just for my own personal development, I just enjoyed doing that. And I think that part is important, that, I think you have to enjoy it, because you're going to have the desire to go out and do things that you don't feel like you're good at. And then as I started, to step up levels, probably the next one was probably an ODP, right? And, that had its bumps in the road as it does now, right? For some, I know it's not as important as it used to be, but, trying to take the politics out of it, try not to have, you know, the managers, kids on the team, and all those things were going on back then as well. But some of those, you know, bumps were good. So you don't make a team, or you don't make it this time, then you go back home and you train even harder, and you try again, you don't make it again, so forth and so on. Then making the ODP team, then the regional team. I never made a regional team. And so, you know, taking those, again, taking those lumps and coming back home and trying again and trying again. And, you know, luckily for me, I was fortunate enough to be able to play in college. And then that's where, as I got around, you know, Elmar was German. You know, he had a lot more knowledge than I did. He had a lot more ideas than I did. But I already had the work rate. And so I can match those two worlds. And those were great for me. And every step, you know, as you're going from club and then you go into high school, and you're trying to play, you know, everything gets a little bit faster. And then you're in ODP and it's a little bit fast, and you go play in the regionals, and just the speed just really picks up everywhere. And then, you know, boom, college, speed picks up. And then the big jump is when you start with the youth national teams. And then it's an astronomical leap. It used to be. I would think for kids now, the leap shouldn't be as big, but it's a pretty big jump. And for me, when I finally joined the full national team, I felt like I was in over my head. I wasn't going to make it. You know, I remember my first training sessions with DC United, calling Elmar and being like, "This is like I'm not going to make it here." So I'm doing the best I can, but it's so fast. And at the time, man, you had John Harkes, you had Marco Echeverry, you had, you know, Raul Diaz Arce, he was on the national team for El Salvador. When we had 6, 7 national team players who played in World Cups, and I was coming out of, you know, Chapel Hill. So at the time, that was very difficult. So yes, all this, the speed just kept jumping so fast. It takes time, and you just have to be willing to again take all the downs and take all the ups and kind of, you know, find a balance in between, and then have some longevity.
Right. I agree with you regarding Elmar. He was a fantastic coach and really made an impact on a lot of players, including myself. Kind of staying along those lines, what would you say are the most important qualities for a player to have in the modern game?
A professional player or youth player?
I would say youth player first, and then expand onto elite level players at the national level.
Yeah, I'd say for youth players, again, I think they have to enjoy what they're doing. I think if it's a chore to kind of go out and work on your own a little bit, it's going to be tough to go far. Mm. I think that, you know, this is just my own sort of gripe. I think that, you know, for the DAs, and obviously that's kind of all up in the air now, but for the DAs that you train 4 days a week and then you have games on the weekend, I think it takes away from players the ability to have the legs and the mental wherewithal to go out and train on their own. You're being told what to do 4 days a week, then that 5th day, you probably should be recovering, and then you have your game or two on the weekend. I mean, it takes a lot of dedication to then still go out and train on your own. You know, in my personal opinion, I think in the old school way, where maybe you had 2 to 3 training sessions a week, you've got that extra day that a player can go out in his backyard and say, I can't hit the broadside of a barn with my left foot. I love the game. This is something I want to work on. And now I have, you know, I'm not mentally drained. I have the desire to go out and do that. I feel like we've taken that away from the youth soccer players. But again, I think the love for the game is super important for kids. A lot of the other stuff, you know, at the youth level will show up and come. You know, I think one of the things that's dangerous, I think that sometimes having talent is more dangerous than not having talent. And if, you know, you can skate along for forever, we've all been there where we said, oh, well, what happened to so-and-so? So I think having a balance of talent and hard work is good. If you're super talented and you're a hard worker, well, then you're in the pocket. And then, you know, if you don't have a ton of talent, but you're a hard worker, you can get there too. And so I think, again, so the heart to do it, the love for the game, and then that hard work mentality, I think will get you there for most kids. And then I think as you really transition into becoming a professional, most of the time people have something about them that stands out. It could be that they're super fast, they're big, they're strong, they have a fast processor, meaning they're cerebral. The game, it moves maybe slower for them. They see it slower. Everyone else is panicking and everything slows down for them. So they have that advantage. And then vision. Some people have vision. Obviously you can apply this to all sports, but or they're able to read the game really well. So I've sort of noticed that, when you get to the highest levels, somebody has this special talent that they've honed, and they've done, they've been able to use to their advantage. And maybe you can combat that. Well, I'm really fast, so I can combat that person's vision on the field. So I think somebody, as soon as you jump to the highest level, that's what it is. Somebody has something special about them.
Right. And that kind of leads me into my next question. And this is about your game, and you're talking about special talents. And like, you were so sound defensively, and you were extremely strong in the tackle, but your heading ability was impeccable, the timing of it. But what's amazing is you also had this knack for scoring goals in big time games. And my question to you is, like, what was your mindset? Like, were you expected to do that? Were you a part of like a focal point of set pieces? And like, how did you prepare mentally for those game-winning moments that you won?
I think it was a combination. So I was certainly, I think maybe at first not so much, but then I think as I started to create chances or be on the end of chances and set pieces, then it became a focal point. I was an absolutely horrible header of the ball, especially in high school, and really maybe my first year or two in college. They used to make fun of me that I could not head the ball, and so it was something that I focused on and worked on, and got a lot better at. And I don't think I scored one goal off of the header in all my years in high school soccer. But I do think being a midfielder in high school helped me a lot. And it's that weird balance of, the DA is great, but you can't play high school. But high school maybe is a place where you go and you ply your trade. And, again, if I were living the day, if I were playing today, maybe I wouldn't be a high school player. So maybe I wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to score all those goals, and I would just be a defender. It's a delicate balance, right? Like someone mentioned before, everybody's path is different in that respect. And I do think that we can, there are ways to create that now by moving kids around. But for me, I was lucky in that most of my years, especially in high school, as I got moved up a little bit more in club, I was playing in the middle as a center midfielder, and a little bit as what we used to call back then, right, marking back. And so I think that helped me in regards to scoring goals. And I think I was able to sort of figure out, I think one of my strengths is kind of reading the game and kind of processing it quickly. So on set pieces, as soon as it would leave someone's foot, I could kind of figure out where it was going to be, like immediately. And I could just and I had the speed to get there quickly. And so as we started to figure out I could do that, then I became a focal point of set pieces. And I always looked at it as like, in big games, to me, it was always not how many goals you score, it's when you score them. And I would always think before a game, I'll probably get at least 1 to 2 chances. So I know that going into it. So I would always make my mind would be set on that. I'm going to get at least 1 to 2 chances. And then second thing I would think is, whatever I do, just get it on frame. So if you're standing in the box and you get it on frame, it's probably going in. And so those are the 2 things that I would always think of. And then, things have to go your way. And and there were times.
What was the sensation like when you did capitalize and scored that first golden goal in the first MLS Cup?
Yeah, well, to your point, that season I had with Marco, you know, we had a little play because again, he could put the ball anywhere. He would kind of just clip it near post. I would run onto a near post and kind of glance it in. And I think maybe I'd scored 3 or 4 goals that year on that particular set play. One time he just hit it and we did it, and then we started working on it. So as we were about to leave to go up to New England, Bob Bradley was like, hey, it was the end of practice. He was like, why don't you guys, before you jump off the field, hit 15, 20 near post corners. And so we were like walking off the field, and he pulled us back on. So we threw some balls, and we were working on it and working on it and working on it. So in that overtime, in my head, I was thinking, oh, we can just get one corner. I know that it'll at least, you know, get it on frame. We'll at least have a shot at it. And so when we got that corner, I think he was thinking the same thing I was. It was like, oh my gosh, if I can just get it here, he'll go get it. And again, he put it in the perfect spot. And as soon as it left his foot, I knew it was in the perfect spot. And so yeah, I mean, it worked out. And then obviously, you know, surreal moment, you know, great feeling. You know, again, all of those moments that flash before you, all the hard work and stuff like that. It was just a fantastic moment.
That's awesome.
So Eddie, you played football and soccer at UNC, and we'd just like to know what was it like juggling the responsibility of playing 2 sports at a Division I school, and also juggling academics with that. And what advice would you have to any players that are growing up and playing multiple sports?
Yeah, so it's a long story, but I'll make it as short as I possibly can. But so I never ended up playing in a football game at UNC. So the story is that when I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to go to Wake Forest to UNC, and it ended up not really working out with Wake Forest. And so at that point, I did not know where I was going to go to school. But I kicked field goals in high school, and my kicking coach, unbeknownst to me, sent all of my kicks to UNC and some other schools in the area. So I was walking out of school one day, and I see this guy who's looking for me, and he was from UNC, and he was like, "Hey, I got your videotape." He goes, "Yeah, do you want to kick field goals?" And I didn't really want to be honest with you. So I was like, "Oh, well, I don't have it. I mean, I don't know." And he was like, "It's a full scholarship." So I was like, "Yeah, then I'll fine. I'll do it. You know, I'll do that." And so I went there to kick field goals, not really to play soccer at first. So once I made that decision that I was going to do that, Elmar called me and was like, "I thought you were going to Wake Forest. I didn't know, blah, blah, blah. I'm assuming you're going to play soccer, right?" So then I said, "Yeah, I guess I play soccer too." So it really fell together just like that. I wasn't really sure. I had my own plan that I was going to go to Wake and I was going to play for Walt and I was going to play for Jay Vidovich. That kind of didn't happen, and I was in limbo. I didn't have an idea of what I was going to do. So long story short, that's what ended up happening. So when I went there, yes, it was hard. I mean, when everyone else is doing regular 2-a-days, and I was doing 4-a-days in preseason, and trying to juggle that and a good football practice, soccer practice, football practice, soccer practice, every day for that preseason, and that was really tough. And then what ended up happening was I got injured at a soccer practice, and I basically just got kind of hit on my ankle, and it cut it. The cut got infected. It got really badly infected, and I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks. I almost had to have my leg amputated. It was a gangrene infection just from that metal cleat cutting my leg. And football started 2 weeks. The season started 2 weeks before the soccer season. And by the way I found out, I was kicking in the blue-white game, warming up, and then I looked down and my leg was huge. And that's when they took me to the hospital, like right away. So they redshirted me for football because I'd already missed 2 games. Soccer hadn't started yet, so I moved right into soccer. But then in that next spring were sort of the final stages of the trials for the Olympic team, and you had to leave school and go into residency. And so Mac Brown at the time was like, you can't leave, you know, we have spring season, you were injured the whole time, you redshirted, you got to stay. And I was like, well, I got to go try for the Olympic team. And so I had to make a decision. And then that's when I sort of cut off football, went to again, residency with the Olympic team, to again try to make that squad, and then came back and finished out with soccer. So crazy story. So again, to sort of answer your question, you know, I think multiple sports now are hard because there's always some individual who's only doing that sport. And I think those kids are tough to keep up with. I love playing multiple sports. Again, basketball, football, baseball, played a lot of baseball in high school, soccer. I don't know if I could do that in this day's environment and not fall too far behind.
Eddie, hey, I know we all know now that diversity is a big part of the game, and there's a lot more, I would assume now than what it was then. I know for me, it definitely is. I mean, I can tell you kind of personally, when I was growing up, there was like a group of friends that, you know, I didn't want to know that I played soccer. And so I guess this is kind of, there's multiple questions here. But once I saw, you know, someone like yourself, like Kobe Jones, you said Roy Lassiter, even DeMarcus Beasley, Eddie Johnson, when I see those guys and I'm playing, then all of a sudden it became more of a cool thing to see another black guy playing. Did you have any difficulties growing up picking the sport of soccer? Like, how did you pick it? And then if you did have any challenges, how did you deal with them? And just, I guess, kind of you can expand where you want to go with that.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're saying, you know, about your friends, maybe not wanting your friends to know you're playing soccer. I'm assuming you're talking about your black friends.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, and that's how it was for black kids. When, you know, for me, I grew up in an all-black neighborhood, but then when I was playing soccer, like, you come out of that neighborhood, and you're in obviously wider communities. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the time, not so much now, obviously, which is good.
Sure.
It was a white sport. Like, why are you playing that white sport? You should be playing, you know, basketball. You should be playing football or some other sport. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that I experienced that. I think for me, the friends that I had, right, the real friends that I had, could tell that, you know, I love the sport so much that it just stopped sort of becoming a question, because it was just what he did. And maybe some of the pressure was taken off that I did play the other sports also. But absolutely, I mean, I think I ran into that 100%. I think it was seen as a white sport because it was a sport that maybe financially, you know, as time went on, started to cost more. So it certainly prices out certain groups of individuals. It's obviously the opposite of the way that it is in the rest of the world. Here it's, you know, we've sort of turned it upside down on its head a little bit. But over time, I think for me, you know, the players that I had to watch were the Desmond Armstrongs, who played on the youth, played on the full national team, Jimmy Banks. You know, those guys I saw on TV that I looked up to a little bit as well. I even ended up rooming with Desmond Armstrong's younger brother in college. So yeah, I mean, I think that was difficult at first, and then on the other side of that was experiencing, probably more so in high school than anything else, some of the racism when you're going to play in some of the other more rural communities. And you know, we were a pretty good high school team at the time, so obviously beating them, and then the racism begins to come out. So I experienced that side as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it was difficult at the time. I'm happy to have been one of the ones that have, you know, helped blaze that trail. Like you said, Eddie and DeMarcus and all of those guys they would tell you the same stories. You know?
Sure. I mean, did you know when you were playing that you kind of had that impact? Like, did you feel like that was a weight on your shoulder as well?
No, I mean, I didn't think about that really at all. I think I was just, again, playing the sport that I enjoyed the most. For me, when it came time to sort of to choose soccer, it wasn't tough for me. I mean, I like that the most. I love the traveling. I love playing against other states, which is the most you did at the time. You know, and actually once we went to Gothia Cup, I mean, I really enjoyed the sport so much that even as I became a professional, I didn't really think that I was having that impact on anyone. And so, you know, I think that was, to me, was sort of a good and welcomed side effect. First time you hear kids say that to you, I think it's fantastic. And I think it's important that as clubs around the country, you know, the sport still isn't as diverse as it should be. You know, clubs have to understand, you have a team and you have one black kid on that team, that there is sort of a social effect that has on that individual player. You know, the right coaches should be checking in on that individual, should be checking in on those families and having that conversation. And most kids are fine and they're okay. But you know, it's not really something that, if you aren't black, you're not really going to think about that particular teammate or what they may be feeling or what environment that you've brought that player into. It's
Right.
something to be cognizant of.
No. Thank you. That's a good answer. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we know that a lot has changed within the world of soccer, and you've already touched upon how your experience in the world around you was as you were growing up in High Point playing the sport. And you've touched a little bit on sort of maybe the practice load or some disadvantages that some kids might have with the schedules today. We also know that you've had some children that have been brought up in the soccer world as well within the United States. So we wanted to see if there were any positives that you think are great about the sport in the U.S. today, and maybe what are some advantages that kids have these days that either they don't realize are as big as they are, or they might not have tapped into yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one is that it's on television, like so much every day, multiple channels. You know, you can watch soccer all day long if you really wanted to. You know, men's game, women's game, it's everywhere. And that is a massive advantage, I think, for American kids in comparison to when, I was growing up and playing. I think to be able to see the game and to be able to see the game at the highest level, you know, all you have to do is turn on your TV to see what they're doing, see the way they think, the moves, all of that. We now have access to all of that now. And I think that's a huge advantage. I think knowledgeable coaches who have played the game is another really big change. I think, you know, again, me growing up, if you could find someone who would play the game, and sometimes they were college players who were from overseas, right? And you know, they thought about the game in a different way is big. I think now for kids, you know, the vast majority of kids playing soccer, and once they get into quote unquote travel or the DA or, you know, even at the rec levels, they have coaches who've played the game at some level. And that again was a big change. And I think David would probably agree. I mean, you could come across back then, you could come across, you know, you're starting to climb levels and people who haven't really played the game that much. And now that's almost unheard of. You almost, unless it's just, you know, a parent, which we all know we need in the clubs, especially at the rec levels, to be able to coach the kids and you know, sometimes it's cat herding, but you know, we still need them as well to be a part of it. And then now those parents are a lot more willing, for the most part, to let go and push them on to someone else. Yeah, I think the coaching to me has, you know, we have a ways to go, but I think that is another really big, significant change. I think we've maybe, I think, you know, our national team, you know, obviously we had, you know, a hiccup right where we didn't qualify, but I do think Americans watching other Americans participate in World Cups, and you almost realize that that's a possibility as an American player. I think there's something to be said for that. I think there are countries, you know, like Brazil or in Argentina, like my wife is Argentinian. They just, like, that's just ingrained in them. They've just grown up with the fact that we're supposed to be in the World Cup, right? I'm supposed to know how to do this or do that. And I think we're getting to that point with the American player that it's just almost, this is the way it's supposed to be. And I remember, playing with some younger players who, for the first time, were becoming young professionals. And for example, you can take a young player for Atlanta United, and he's now signed. Well, he walks into a $40 million complex. You rewind the clock, you go back to '96, or even or even when I was playing in Real Salt Lake, we used to change at a strip mall, where our locker room was in a strip mall, right? And you're doing washing your uniform at home, and you're bringing it back the next day, and you're driving to practice and meeting. And now these kids, again, they walk into these, huge soccer specific stadiums, amazing training facilities. It's all sort of in front of them. So those are huge advantages that we now have. So the game, it's come a very long way.
Eddie, you touched on this earlier, but how big of an effect do you think socioeconomic status plays in youth soccer today? And do you think that the United States Soccer Federation is doing enough to try to expand the game to include players from different backgrounds, both geographical and socioeconomic?
Yeah, it's clearly not enough being done. I don't think that it's necessarily a lack of effort or people don't want to do it. Our country's big. We're still having difficulty just choosing talent, period. So I do think that it's hasn't been good enough, and we have to figure out a way to involve everyone. I have a daughter that's in the DA, and it's expensive, obviously. So clearly, you're going to price out certain individuals. We obviously want the best coaches, and we want coaches who can do this for a living, right? We want the coach who can go home and sit down and do his practice plan and watch games and go get licenses and do all that. Everybody wants that for their kids. You have to pay for that. So now you have to try to figure out, how do we get that and bring the price down and involve everyone else. And so I think there's a way to do it. I don't know what that way is. I don't think a lot of us don't quite know how we do that. But if we can fill a basketball court up somewhere with kids that may be from underserved communities, and they're able to get to where we see the NBA, there's a way to do it. And I think we have to figure that out. And I do think once we figure that out, people will argue this all the time, that, well, you can't take the NFL guys and the NBA guys and put them on a soccer field. I think you absolutely can. And I think that we lose some of those players at certain ages. And then I think obviously some just are never involved in the game. And I think, it doesn't just have to be them that are on the field, right? It's a mix of everybody. And then the cream rises to the top and we choose the best players. So I think we're very exclusionary at the moment, unfortunately, for soccer in the U.S. And it's going to take somebody or some group of people to really figure out how to get it done. But it's probably something that's a 20, 25 year project, right? And figuring out, off the top of my head, I think number one, the first thing is that it just has to be in schools. Just sort of has to be in the curriculum of schools. And that's why I think, basketball, some of the other sports, in football, they have an advantage. The best of their sports sometimes are in the schools, and it crosses over to the club. We've now just excluded it out of schools in some level, in high school, obviously, on the boys' side, and more the girls' side too, unless you're ECNL. So, maybe trying to figure out a way to wrap that in. But to answer your question, I think it's unfortunate, but I don't think I don't think there's a blame game where you're pointing fingers and trying to figure out, oh, they must not want to do this. I just think it's really hard.
Well, we appreciate your time, and we do have some questions from our actual membership. So we want to get to those. I have a couple of those questions real quick. So I'll read a few of them off for you here. This one is from Landon. He's in our youth academy, so he's a 2011 player. What is the best drill to do if you're by yourself?
Well, it depends on how good he is, but there are a lot of yeah.
Eddie at PTFC, he's the man.
Oh, he's a man. Okay, good, good. Wow, I'd say cones. You can use cones. You can use shoes. I literally used to use trash out of the trash can. I'd take bottles, or like glass bottles, or like the Coke bottles used to, recycle. You can stand those up, or paper, or whatever. And I'd say drills with cones, dribbling through cones, different patterns with dribbling through cones. You can set the cones up. You can go in and out. You can go diagonal. You can juggle through the cones in and out, keeping the ball up. You can run and juggle through those cones in certain different patterns. And then, figuring out a way on top of that to build some sort of a rebounder, to me, is by far the most, important thing. I mean, most communities have HOAs, so they don't let you build like those big, huge boards anymore. But you can kind of, build something mid-sized, or you can go online and they have really nice rebounders that are really effective. I mean, my kids have them in the backyard. And so I think spending time with the rebounder and the cones or whatever you have in a ball is paramount.
Nice. This one is from Lucas Williford. He's a 2006 age group. What should players look forward to in their soccer career?
I would say enjoying the game. If again, I keep going back to it, really enjoying finding a love for the game. They have to set their own goals. He has to set his own goals. I mean, if his goal is to play high school, that's a great goal. Then write out the steps. How are you going to get there? How do you see yourself getting from point A to point B? If it's college, then it's college. If it's becoming a professional, it's becoming a professional. Set that goal. Write down the steps that that you feel like you're going to need to take to get there, and then share them with your coaches. See if they make sense. Share them with your friends, your other teammates. See if they make sense. Share them with your parents. See if they make sense, and then go from there. But I think setting a goal and figuring out what you want to do and where you want to be, to me is kind of like step one. And,
Sure.
and then you'll figure out, oh, I'm looking forward to playing in a World Cup one day. Okay, let's back that out and figure out how you're going to get there.
Nice. Well, we all know you said Marco Echeverri was the best player that you played with. For this player, Braden Creasamore, he's our 2007 age group. He wants to know, who was your favorite teammate from any level, say from high school, college, professional, international, any level. Who was your favorite teammate?
Oh, that's put me on the spot.
You're not gonna hurt any feelings.
Yeah, I had fantastic teammates across the board. Probably I guess probably the person I was the closest to, I was probably Roy Lassiter. We roomed together a lot, and so we spent a ton of time together. Our families know each other. So I'd probably say Roy Lassiter, and then as Roy moved on, probably a kid named, maybe some people may not remember him, Bobby Convey. Again, roommate. We still know each other. Our wives know each other. And Bobby ended up obviously playing in EPL for a little while also, and then retired. So probably those two were probably the individuals I was closest to, mostly because we were on the road together all the time. But again, I was fortunate to have some fantastic teammates, club level and national team level.
Okay. This next one is from Lindsay Swift. She's on her 2005 girls age group. She's also a Southwest Cowboy.
All right, yeah.
Or cowgirl, I guess.
Cowgirl, yeah.
Cowgirl. What was your most memorable moment when you were at Southwest High School? Like soccer-wise, your most memorable soccer moment.
Probably playing against, I'm going to get the name of the school, Greensboro Day.
Greensboro Day, it's
That's
private school.
Private school, yeah. Probably
Yeah.
playing against them and chipping the goalkeeper from half field. That would probably be my most fun, enjoyable moment. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, last one here. Lucas Ray, our 2008 age group. He says, I really get nervous sometimes playing in soccer games. Did you ever get nervous playing in big stadiums in front of all those people? If so, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, of course. I think being nervous is a good thing. I would be more worried if you're not nervous. I think being nervous makes you sharp. It keeps you on edge. To me, I always felt like, I don't want to be too relaxed. And so I welcomed being nervous. I liked the feeling of being nervous because, again, I felt like it made me, it just prepared me for the game. So leading up to the night before the game, you're nervous. And then, leading up to the game, you're pulling up to the stadium, whistle blows, all that, full of nerves. And I think the more you play, the more you learn to embrace it. And it almost becomes like a good feeling. At least to me it was. I enjoyed being nervous. And then 2 minutes to the game, it's gone because now you're focused on the game. And maybe there are different moments in the game that you kind of get a little bit nervous. But again, I think nerves are good. Nerves means that you're sharp, your brain is sharp, and you're ready to go. So he should embrace being nervous. It's a good thing.
Well, Eddie, you've provided some incredible insight from like a club perspective, college level perspective, and also professional and international level as well. And I just wanted to personally thank you on behalf of our panel, but also our PTFC membership, our players and our families. This has been incredible. And thank you so much for spending the time with us. And I guess lastly, if you could just leave us with this, and that is maybe a little bit of encouragement, I guess in some basic words during this time of uncertainty, things we could work on, things we can think about as we kind of navigate through this challenging time for all of us. But once again, thank you for all you've done, and we really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm obviously, more than happy to do it. And I appreciate you guys having me on. And I'd say, as everyone we're all sort of shut in here a little bit. I think as things are shut down and, fingers are crossed, we all get back to playing and having fun and doing things like that. But, the silver lining is that you have time, you have a ball, hopefully you have a backyard. If you don't, you have a driveway. I've been watching videos for kids, and I've seen everything from kids kicking the ball off of steps because they don't have that big of a yard, kicking the ball off of car tires. Some kids have rebounders that they built out of wood during this time period. Some have their parents out there since the parents aren't at work, making the parents kick the ball around with them. There's just so much to do, and I think it's a great time for players to work on the things that they haven't been good at, that you do now have time to be able to improve on. And if it's, I always say left foot, but if you're left foot, if you're right foot that you don't feel comfortable with, now you have a ton of time to be able to work on that stuff. And then if you were someone who, hey, wasn't not really sure if I like soccer, or you felt a little burnt out, now you get to go out and do the drills that you want to do, have fun with just the ball again, really enjoy the sport all over again, and kind of get back to what you, to the reason you fell in love with the sport to begin with. And I've seen parents out playing against the kids. Kids challenge your parents to 2v2 game, 3v3, 1v1 games. I mean, there are a million things that you can do. And but I do think the silver lining is that we've now got a decent chunk of time where kids should be improving their game technically. It's just a fantastic little window that we have here.
Awesome. Once again, Eddie, thank you. You've been a true ambassador for the sport, and can't thank you enough for the time you've given us. Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it, Evan. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate it.